When modern builders hear the word waterproofing, they think of barriers, membranes, sealants and coatings designed to keep water out at all costs. Viking builders thought very differently. They knew water would always reach wood in the north. Rain, mist, snowmelt, ground moisture and sea spray made total exclusion impossible. Instead of fighting water, Vikings engineered wood, structures and airflow so moisture could never stay long enough to cause decay. That insight, more than any coating, is why Viking ships, halls and harbour works survive centuries of brutal exposure. This matters from the first minute because it overturns the assumption that durability comes from sealing materials rather than understanding them. Why did Vikings reject waterproofing as a primary strategy? Waterproofing assumes failure is rare. Vikings assumed failure was inevitable. Any coating cracks, wears or peels. Once breached, it traps moisture beneath it. Vikings observed that sealed wood rotted faster once damage occurred. Their solution was not to trap water out, but to guarantee it a way out. They designed wood systems that tolerated wetting while preventing prolonged dampness. Rot fungi cannot survive without time. Viking builders removed time from the equation. So, how did timber selection replace chemical protection before construction even began? Viking builders started with slow-grown timber from dense forests. Pine, oak and spruce, grown under competition, produced tight growth rings and dense fibres. Dense wood absorbs water slowly and releases it evenly. Fast-grown timber behaves like a sponge. Modern lumber fails early, not because of climate, but because it is structurally different from historical timber. Applying this principle today means choosing dense, slow-grown wood for exposed or structural use instead of relying on treatments to compensate. Now, why did winter felling matter more than any later treatment? Trees were felled during winter dormancy when sap levels were lowest. Sap feeds microorganisms and accelerates decay. Removing it at harvest permanently reduced rot risk. This practice was consistent across Viking regions. Modern research confirms that winter-cut timber resists decay longer. Today, builders can apply this by sourcing lumber harvested in dormant seasons or allowing greenwood to season fully before use. Now, let's talk about how long seasoning turned wood into a kind of moisture regulator. Viking timber, you see, was air-seasoned for years. This slow-drying process collapsed the internal moisture channels gradually, rather than tearing them open all at once. What that did was reduce water absorption, while still preserving the wood's ability to release vapour. The wood, interestingly, was not sealed. It was balanced. In contrast, modern kiln drying really prioritizes speed, but often leaves wood stressed and much more prone to cracking. So, for builders who want true durability, it's best to air-dry critical components under cover with consistent airflow, even if that means delaying construction a bit. Next, let's consider why charring and smoke hardened wood instead of sealing it. One of the most misunderstood Viking practices, actually, was controlled charring. This wasn't about burning wood for appearance, rather light surface charring closed the outer capillaries, making the surface hydrophobic while keeping the core breathable. Smoke exposure achieved a similar effect by depositing phenols, which deter fungi and insects. These treatments worked so well because they didn't trap moisture inside the wood. Even today, lightly charring fence posts, foundation beams, or exterior cladding remains one of the most effective non-chemical preservation methods available. Now, let's explore how elevation and geometry replaced ground contact waterproofing. Viking builders, whenever possible, avoided burying wood. Posts would rest on stones, beams were set on raised sills, floors were elevated above the damp ground. Water was always diverted before it could reach the timber. In modern construction, we often place treated wood directly into the soil and, well, hope that chemistry will overcome physics. The Vikings, though, relied on gravity and drainage instead. Elevation, in fact, remains the most reliable rot prevention strategy ever developed. You see, airflow was engineered just as deliberately as strength. Longhouses, ship sheds and storage buildings were all designed to, well, breathe. The walls, they allowed vapour to escape. Roofs were built to vent moisture, and subfloors promoted air movement. Any moisture that entered always had a clear exit, you know. This constant drying cycle made sustained dampness, well, impossible. In contrast, modern airtight construction often traps moisture behind layers. Applying Viking logic today means, really, designing ventilation paths behind siding, beneath floors, and around structural joints. So, let's talk about how joinery eliminated those hidden moisture traps. Viking joinery, you see, allowed movement without splitting. Peg joints would swell when wet, sealing up temporarily, and then, as the wood dried, they'd relax again. This clever approach prevented cracks that would otherwise invite deep moisture penetration. Rigid fasteners, on the other hand, tend to concentrate stress and create, well, rot pathways. Builders today, honestly, can extend wood lifespan dramatically just by allowing movement rather than always resisting it. Now, why do ships prove that waterproofing was never really the point? Viking ships, after all, were always wet. They survived because planks swelled and shrank without cracking. Seams were actually designed to move, and water drained away quickly. Tar was used, but only selectively, to shed water, not to seal the wood permanently. The whole system worked because, really, no single layer was expected to do everything. So, how do you apply what the Vikings used instead of just waterproofing? Well, first, choose dense wood. Then season it slowly. Harden the surfaces where needed. Make sure to elevate wood above ground moisture. Design for proper drainage and airflow. Most importantly, accept wetting as temporary, not fatal. In the end, it's about building systems, not barriers. Viking builders did not, in fact, defeat water. They simply denied it the conditions it needs to destroy wood. That's why their structures endured, even where modern ones fail. If you value historically proven knowledge over modern assumptions, do consider subscribing to Ancient Know-How. Share this guide with your fellow history and survival enthusiasts, and help keep these enduring principles alive where they still belong. In real-world practice, not just forgotten theory.